Before the year was over, the man who built a fortune on a stolen design would kneel at a dying engineer's bedside, begging for the one secret that could save him. He would arrive to find the bed already empty. For 30 years, Vinh gave the company his hands, his eyes, and every late night he had to give. He was the quietest man in the building, and quietly the best one in it. He had spent those years chasing one small thing, a heart valve cheap enough that no poor family would ever bury a child who could have lived. His own daughter had been one of the lucky ones. Too many of his neighbors' children were not, and he never forgot their small, empty chairs. Then the company changed hands, and Quan walked in wearing a suit worth more than Vinh made in a year. Quan loved the look of success and the sound of his own name. He had little use for an old man who smelled of machine oil, too. Nam was young then, fresh out of school, sent to carry Vinh's drawings up to the executive floor. He worshipped the old man. Vinh taught him how a single millimeter could mean a beating heart or a still one. And there was Chang, the executive, who signed whatever Quan put in front of her and never read what lay underneath. Looking away was a skill in that building. Chang had made it an art. Years later, Nam would learn that staying silent is also a choice. Back then, he only wanted to keep his job. The valve was almost finished. Vinh had solved everything but one last flaw, and he was close. When the design was ready, Vinh carried it up to Quan himself, his hands shaking with hope. He asked for one thing only. He wanted the valve made cheaply and given to the hospitals that serve the poor. Quan looked at the design and did not see children. He saw patents, headlines, and a number with a great many zeros. Within a month, the patent was filed. The inventor's name on it was Quan. Vinh's name was nowhere at all. They called it the Quan valve. He had it engraved on a brass plate before a single one was ever tested. Vinh found out from a press release, standing alone in his workshop with the printout shaking in his hand. He went to Quan one last time, not for the money and not for the credit. He went because the valve was not finished. There is a flaw, Vinh told him. Under strain, the valve can fail. The fix is here in my notebook. Let me finish it and I will ask for nothing. Quan laughed. The launch was set and the buyers were waiting, and he would not lose a single day to an old man's worry. Got this without you, he said. I don't need you now. He had Vinh's badge taken at the door. Chong stood in the corner and watched it happen. She signed the launch order that same afternoon and told herself it was not her concern. Nam saw the old man leave with a cardboard box and 30 years inside it. He wanted to run after him. He didn't. 2 weeks later, alone in his workshop past midnight, Vinh pressed a hand to his chest and slid quietly to the floor. His daughter Thuy never left his side. She held the hand that had drawn 1,000 drawings and felt how thin it had grown. Nam came on the third evening, turning his cap in his hands, unable to meet the old man's eyes. Vinh was not angry. He patted the blanket and asked the boy to sit, as if it were only another lesson. From under his pillow, he drew the worn leather notebook and pressed it into Nam's hands. Inside was everything. The dated drawings that proved the valve was his, and the fix for the flaw worked out to the last millimeter. I don't care whose name is on it, Vinh whispered. I care that it works. Promise me no child gets the broken one. Nam promised. He meant it with his whole heart. There, in the quiet of the ward. That night, alone in his room, he photographed every page. He told himself it was respect. Part of him was already afraid. The next morning, he did the brave thing first. He took the notebook straight to Quan and laid the truth on the desk. Quan barely glanced at it. The launch was a triumph, and his name was on every screen, and he would not let it become a lie now. Chong stepped in smoothly and lifted the notebook from the desk. Leave it with me, she said. I'll take care of it. Nam believed her. It was the last time he ever would. That night, Chong locked the notebook in the bottom of her safe and turned the key twice. Then she called Nam in. She knew his mother was ill, and she knew exactly what his silence was worth to him. He thought of the hospital bills and his mother's tired face, and he took the envelope. That was the night he learned the price of his own shame. The Quan bao shipped by the thousands. It went into hospitals and clinics, and the small chests of children whose parents wept with relief. Quan stood on a bright stage and accepted an award for saving young lives. He thanked no one but himself. While the applause still rang, 100 miles away, the monitors beside Ving's bed began to slow. He died before dawn, believing his life's work had become a danger to the very children he made it for. His dream was buried with him, and the truth was buried in a drawer. For a while, it seemed both would stay there forever. Nam kept the promotion and the silence. He also kept the copy he had made hidden under a floorboard, where even he tried not to look. A year passed. Quan moved into a glass house above the city and forgot the old man's name entirely. Then the first vow failed, then another. Always under strain, always the way Vinh had warned. On the page Quan refused to read. Children who had been saved were suddenly in danger. The reports came faster than anyone could bury them. And every single failure carried his name. The brass plate he had been so proud of was on every recall and every grieving headline. Investigators came for the records. Buyers tore up their contracts. The number with all those zeros began running the other way. Quan tore his offices apart, looking for an answer. There was only one, and he had held it in his hands a year ago and waved it away. He remembered the old man, the notebook, the flaw, the fix. He drove to the hospital through the rain, wild with the hope that Vinh could still save him. He found the right ward, the right window, the right bed. It was empty, stripped bare, and waiting for someone new. The nurse told him gently that Mr. Vinh had passed almost a year before. Quan sank into the chair beside the empty bed and understood far too late what he had thrown away. Chong did the one thing she had always been good at. She looked away from him now, handed the investigators a spotless folder and let him drown alone. But the truth she had locked away was never the only copy across the city. A young man finally stopped staring at his floorboard. Nam walked into the investigator's office and set down the pages he had carried like a stone for a year. Dated in Ving's own hand, they proved two things at once. The valve had never been Quan's, and the flaw had been solved before a single child was ever harmed. The patent was struck from his name and the award was taken back. The fortune he built on a stolen page came apart in a single season. He had been too proud to share the credit and too proud to take the help. In the end, the help he refused was the only thing that could have saved him. Ving's name was returned to the design he had bled for. Engineers opened his notebook and built the valve the way he had always meant it to be built. Made right and made cheap. It went into the hospitals that served the poor, exactly as he had begged them to do. They gave it his name in 1,000 small chests. A poor man's quiet work now beats where a rich man's pride once failed. He never saw any of it. That is how pride collects. The cost is always paid by someone, and it always comes due too late. Tui forgave Nam the day he came forward. Her father, she said, would have forgiven him long before that. Nam carries the old man's lesson now, the one he learned too slowly. Looking away is a choice, and silence always has a cost. Pride built Quan, a tower in a name, and pride is what brought them both down. The humble man he stepped on now stands far above him. In every life that valve still saves, keenness can wait a long time to be repaid. So can cruelty. Both of them find the door in the end. If you believe that pride always collects its debt, and that quiet good is never truly buried, subscribe to Karma Tales. Stay for the next story. Some debts take years to come due, and this next one will sit with you long after the screen goes dark.